Hello, everybody. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer. We're going to talk a little spring football today. We're going to talk a little bit about, I don't know, whatever kind of name you want to assign to it, baseball, warm-up, top gate, or what have you. But Logan and I haven't spoken much since MSU unveiled the infamous Adidas warm-up tops last week with the vulgarity directed at Ole Miss. State has apologized. Adidas has apologized. I don't think the higher-ups at Mississippi State really saw that or signed off on it by any stretch. Logan and I are going to talk about that a little bit, as well as some spring football. Logan, how are you, man?
Hey, doing good, Parrish. And yeah, you're right. It happened last Thursday, and it was a group of about 5 reporters came out there for our normal weekly interviews, and just to talk to Coach Cohen and some of the players, just to get some stuff for our preview for the weekend series against Florida. And half the team was out on the field taking BP and doing their infield and outfield drills and stuff like that. And the second wave of players started emerging from the clubhouse and kind of sitting around the dugout, and they all had these horrible looking shirts on, along with some leggings, and they had cleats as well with that same design on them. Well, they were brand new, so we started taking pictures of them. We were actually encouraged to take pictures of them because they were new, and and we were taking pictures of them mainly just because they were so awful looking. And the Twitter response that we got from those pictures were that they needed to be burned immediately just because they were so hideous. And it wasn't until later on that we actually looked a little closer and saw what they said. And I really don't know the whole backstory behind them, but it doesn't. My theory is that a box arrived in the clubhouse during practice that day. And the players that were just happened to be in there, started throwing on the gear. I don't think anybody inspected them, and they just came out there. Once they realized what they said, there was an administrator that was right down there in the clubhouse talking to some of them, and they were taking off, and things started spinning really quickly once they realized what had happened. But I think the entire team and coaching staff was oblivious to the fact of what they actually said.
Logan, I've had the same theory, and I think you know how apparel works. I mean, I think I know. I have this image of like apparel and gear and shirts just coming to a clubhouse like all the time, like it's not that big a deal, and they're all the time putting on new and different things. And as you said, half the team was out there, which makes me think that they weren't around when maybe a box arrived, and then it was just opened and passed out to those guys that were like within range of the box. I don't know. I do think that it's hard to believe that nobody noticed that at all, because the shirt in and of itself is designed to draw your eye to those phrases. Maybe there was a mid-level employee, a baseball employee, an equipment manager, maybe, who looked at that and thought, hey, this is funny, and laughed at it, and and didn't think about or didn't know that there were reporters on the other side of the wall who were out there. And I could see it spinning out of control like that. I don't think Mississippi State signs off on this officially. Nobody wants to inflict that type of PR damage on themselves voluntarily. But I also go back to a blog post that I wrote last Friday, the day after it happened. Look, Adidas has accepted responsibility. Adidas has apologized to Mississippi State, which is the Adidas client. Adidas should apologize to Ole Miss. I mean, State has endured a little embarrassment here. Ole Miss was the one to which the vulgar phrase was directed. I think Adidas should apologize there as well. The happiest people last week had to be like Nike and Under Armour, thinking maybe one of them had a chance at an MSU contract.
Yeah, and Mississippi State just signed a 7-year deal with Adidas last year, and everything was kind of hunky-dory with Mississippi State and Adidas up until last Thursday. And Scott Strickland is very unhappy with how this whole thing was arranged. I have no doubts that Scott had no idea that phrase was printed on those shirts and those leggings and those cleats. So, I definitely think that relationship's strained. Now, is it strained to the point where Mississippi State is able to wiggle out of their contract with Adidas? I'm not sure, but I definitely know that things aren't as great today as they were a year ago when they signed that 7-year deal.
Logan, I would think, without even seeing the contract, there's some language in there that would allow State out of the contract if State wants to get out of the deal. There's got to be, somehow there's an attorney somewhere who interprets this as breach of contract, and breach of any contract is grounds to break the whole thing off. So, I don't know. Maybe State gets out of the contract. Maybe, Scott Strickland uses this as leverage, and they get free apparel for a couple of years, man. Adidas needs to make good on this some way. If that relationship's going to continue, there needs to be some retribution other than we're sorry. And maybe there was discipline within the company over there for an employee who let that go. I think at the very least, from the Adidas perspective, it does show a very good understanding of your client's fan base. It does show that you're in step with what the feelings for a lot of people in the rivalry are.
Right, and you're right. I mentioned earlier about the Twitter people talking about how when they saw how ugly they were, everybody wanted them burned. Well, once they saw the phrase, there are a lot of people that wanted to sign up and buy those right then. So. It definitely, they understood a lot of their fan base and how they feel towards their rival school. But there is a liaison, between Mississippi State and Adidas, that makes a lot of that kind of stuff happen. I don't know if that guy's responsible for this. We haven't seen any names, of anybody being terminated or disciplined in any way over this whole deal. So. I guess it's a moot point at the, now, the jerseys, it was just a practice jersey. None of them were ever worn on field. They'll definitely never be worn again. So, I guess if us 5 reporters wouldn't have been out there that day, then, this whole thing would have never happened.
Well, I wonder, and maybe when it all blows over, Scott will answer this question a little bit. How many shirts are we talking about? 50, 100, maybe? And what happened to it? What are you going to do with it? What do you do with those shirts? So we'll see. Shifting gears a little bit, Logan, spring football. Let's talk about quarterbacks. Big stories at that position at both schools, starting with Ole Miss, who is looking for a starter. State's looking for a dependable backup, a number 2 guy behind Dak Prescott. Let's start with Ole Miss. A lot of people thought signing Chad Kelly and then staying with him after the offseason arrest that he would be the guy. And I still think it will turn out that way, frankly. I think he throws a really good deep ball. I think the arm strength is there. I think the mobility is pretty good. I think the mobility is going to end up being better than Ryan Buchanan, who is the leader right now. Not the leader by much, but he is the leader. That's what Hugh Freeze said at the close of spring drills, after the Grove Bowl. Ryan Buchanan's had 2 years in the program, and this is something else that Freeze has stressed. And Chad Kelly, as he told me yesterday prior to speaking at the Rebel Road trip in Tupelo, Freeze told me, look, we've had Buchanan for 2 seasons, and we haven't had Chad Kelly for a semester. He went on to talk about Kelly's football IQ and some of the other things. The arm strength, the accuracy. I think he'll end up being the guy. I think in the end, with the receivers that Ole Miss has, Kelly's ability to stretch the field is going to be pretty important. Now, talking about mobility here, I thought Ryan Buchanan looked better this spring, and we only saw him a little bit. Now, practice was mostly closed. There were 2 or 3 open practices. And kind of hard to gauge from that because not all of the work at that point is 11 on 11. And when you don't open up a lot of practice and then you do, everybody's there, recruits and boosters and media and whatnot, and it gets really crowded on the sidelines. in the football building, in the indoor practice facility. So it was hard to tell a lot from the practices that were open. I thought in the spring game that Buchanan looked very mobile, looked more mobile than I remembered him before. He's not a stiff back there by any stretch. He completed about 50% of his passes, maybe less than that in the game, but had a lot of drops. Not a good day for Ole Miss receivers in the Grove Bowl. So Buchanan is, I mean, it's a competition. It is a competition right now. Buchanan is the leader. I think Kelly ultimately catches up here. We'll see. Tell us a little bit about the race for number 2 behind Dak.
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely not a controversy over who the starter is going to be at Mississippi State. Mississippi State with Dak Prescott probably has the top returning quarterback in the Southeastern Conference coming back, and that's good news for Mississippi State and their offense. But behind him, it's kind of a free-for-all. Damian Williams has been the backup behind Dak Prescott the last 2 years, but he was out the entire spring. I think he had 2 practices where he actually went through a couple of drills. The rest of the time he was spent in the injury pit. And I think it was a pectoral issue with Damian Williams. That's nothing that major. I mean, that'll heal over time. Definitely over the summer, he'll be ready to go by the fall. But Nick Fitzgerald was the only quarterback that was actually only scholarship quarterback that was able to practice behind Dak Prescott. He got all the reps. He got all the second team reps, even took some first team reps this spring. Nick Fitzgerald is a redshirt freshman who's been in the program for over a year and a half. He actually enrolled in December of last year. So he's been through spring practice before. It was his second spring. He's been through 2 different bowl practices. So he kind of is starting to come into his own as far as learning the playbook. And even passing the football, he came from a option offense in high school, didn't throw the ball just a whole lot. So he's coming to his own, throwing the football, had a couple of touchdown passes in the spring game. He also had a couple of interceptions during the spring game. And then Elijah Staley is a redshirt freshman quarterback. He's a 6'6" southpaw. Also plays on the Mississippi State basketball team, so that tells you about his athleticism. Well, he had knee surgery back in December, so he wasn't able to do a whole lot this spring. Just kind of went through some quarterback drills, threw the football around really well. He's just immobile back there, so he wasn't able to scrimmage at all. I think that puts him a little bit behind. So I think it'll be an interesting race when he gets here in August, to see who's healthy and who emerges forward to be that backup behind Dak Prescott.
Well, I'll tell you what, one thing that you can say about Damian Williams right now is he is 1-0 as an Egg Bowl starter. That's a pretty important stat at Mississippi State. Logan, when I think about State, I think about losses on defense. Just tell us a little bit about defense. I know obviously there's a lot of excitement right now with Manny Diaz coming back.
Right, and I think they did lose a lot of players, especially along the defensive line. They lost 3 other 4 starters there. They lost both their safety starters as well, with Jay Hughes and Justin Cox leaving. So there's some holes to fill. Benargent McKinney left a year early at linebacker. They lost a cornerback in Jamerson Love. So there's some spots to fill on defense. The good news is they played so many players last year with that 1A and that 1B